Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to a pastor and a therapist podcast. I am the therapist of the duo, and I have with me my brother, Pastor Byron Benton.
Hello, happy Monday, magnificent Monday. It is.
Happy Monday. So we are joining you at a time. Usually we are live at 12 o'clock, but we had to make some adjustments today. Interesting, as we talk about time management part 2. So we are joining you now at 12:30. So we'll give some of our fellow followers time to join us, but we're going to go ahead and get started with our topic today. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Pastor Byron.
All right. So, as everybody may remember, we are talking about time well spent, balancing life, faith, and responsibilities. And we talked through some things in our first episode where we were really processing through, what do you do? How do you, what's impeding your time and your time management? And then how do you spend better time doing so? With that said, the good doctor gave us some homework. She gave us some pretty serious homework. There were 2 things, and I think it'd be good for us to kind of pick up there for a moment. One of them in particular, which was to basically get still for a good 30 minutes, not sleeping, but finding a place of peace and rest, relaxation, cutting out the noise, right? Because if you're scrolling on your phone, right, if you're getting those neurons clicking and you're looking and you're getting dopamine hits and all that kind of stuff. As a matter of fact, we're finding out now that there are children at young ages becoming addicted to cellular phones and tablets and things of that nature. There's a lot of studies out there showing how harmful those are when we allow ourselves to just consistently scroll screen time. But sidebar closed. The reality is we were supposed to take homework and spend 30 minutes doing so. Did I articulate that correctly, good doctor?
Yes. So that was part 1 of the homework assignment. Yes, that is correct.
All right. So that was part 1. So I will chime in on what I experienced with part 1 and then kick it over to what you experienced, and then you can segue us into part 2. I did it 2 different times. One time was just sitting in a chair with complete silence. And for the first, I don't know how long it was, but for probably, I would say 3 to 5 minutes, my mind just flooded with a bunch of different things that I had forgotten to do that now coming back to mind, things that I need to do, all that kind of stuff. And it was finally after about that first 3 to 5 minutes where all of a sudden I kind of closed out all those things in my mind. And I was finally able to just begin to experience peace, experience just sitting. And I came out of the 30 minutes a lot more focused. I actually began to kind of check off the things that I need to do that all flooded my mind, that were kind of robbing me of my full 30 minutes. And then the second time I decided to do it after working out. And that was amazing. So what I did is I did a full workout, weightlifting and all that, went on a jog, stretched, and then just laid on the mat after stretching. And that was amazing because my body, my mind, and my soul felt more in sync because I'd already released a lot of energy and things of that nature. I think what happened the first time when I just sat for 5 minutes, the working out and everything kind of took care of all of that. And I just reached such a place of relaxation and peace that I didn't want to come out of it. Now I needed to come out of it, so I did. But I could have stayed there for probably a full hour, and it was incredibly rewarding. So out of the 2 for me, I found more value out of doing it post-workout this go round. So I feel like I need to explore more. I only have 2 data points here. I want to explore both of those again and just see how I experience them. But that was me. And everybody, please comment in the chat section what you experienced as we're sharing what we experienced. What did you experience, Dr. Fredrica?
So we are talking about time well spent for those who are just joining us. And this is part 2 of a series that Pastor Byron started us on actually a month ago to this week. And in that, we assigned homework. And so the first part of that was just to spend time. And Pastor Byron is talking about the 30 minutes that he spent time doing nothing. Now, it wasn't time you were supposed to be going to sleep, but just time just being. And experience that. So for me, I experienced that once since we have been away from each other, where it was intentional time of just sitting and actually being. And what I had to do at first was just do a lot of self-talk about not thinking about all the things that I needed to do, but just turn no music on, nothing, but just to sit and be present in the moment. So that was, I would say, one time that I spent. I would say another time, and this is different, but I recently I've done a lot of driving across various state lines here recently. And in that, one of the things that I did was use that time to really just be and to actually focus on, of course, the road, but also to allow my mind not to be thinking about what I need to do when I get to my next destination, but instead just enjoy the journey. Now, we're talking about balancing life, faith, and responsibilities. And I noticed recently that one of our viewers on YouTube posted their schedule. So this was part 2 of the homework assignment. And that was, you were supposed to identify what were some of the goals and identify a due date. So I did respond to our viewer, Darlene, because she posted her goals to April 1st to see whether or not she met those goals. And some of you may be just joining us for the first time. And so we see here, we have several of our viewers now who've kind of comment, and Sister Joyce is asking, what's the best way to release stress during a workout with shoulder injury? So that's a very great question. Certainly one for physicians, which we are not. But what but what I will definitely say is Pastor Byron talked about how you can how he released stress after his workout. Certainly, if you have an injury, the goal here would not be that you would do additional workout in order to relieve stress. So how about, have you concentrated on breathing, right? There are some exercises in which you can concentrate on breathing, noticing your breath, mindfulness, that you could certainly release stress. It would not cause you. So there's different ways that we can release stress, right? One is through physical activity. Another one is mental. And depending upon the person, for someone like myself, the mental one is really hard because it is training ourselves, and largely because I'm a doer, right? I'm constantly on the go doing things. So I'm thinking about the next thing. My mind just races. It's just who I am. So now to sit in space. So I would say if you have an injury and you can't get to the gym, you cannot work out, one way to release stress is you could go for a walk. If you're physically able to go for a walk, right? That's not causing any additional injury to your shoulder, but actually go for a walk. Another thing that you can do is take a bath, right? Light a candle or turn on a battery operated candle, soak in a bathtub, maybe with the injury, if Epsom salt is possible for you, listen to some music. Other ways that you can reduce stress is, again, to sit and focus on your breathing. One way I like to do it for persons who are just learning to concentrate on breathing is to say, get some of those bubbles that you would give to your grandchild, your child, or you played with as a child, and just actually get those bubbles and blow. Try to blow as many bubbles as you can, big and small, because in doing that, you'll actually be able to see in real time how much you are focused on your breath. And you'll be surprised, like you pull that wand out and you get no bubbles, that's speaking to your breathing. So that's yet another way in which you can focus on stress and reducing that. What do you have, Pastor Byron. And let me also say, of course, meditation, right? And meditation on the word. And I know oftentimes people, Christians, talk about it being a different religion, but the Bible tells us to meditate on the word. Like that's a Christian principle. So whatever your faith tradition, we're in Holy Week, right? Now is a great time to meditate on God's word. It may just be one word, it may be a whole scripture, text, but you can do that to reduce stress. So meditate on God's word. What about you, Pastor Bob? What do you have?
Yeah, I would definitely talk to your physician. I'm assuming if there's an injury, there's some kind of physical therapy that's going on as well. Physical therapists are great with being able to recommend other exercises that you can do at home to continue the process, one, of healing, but also not re-injuring or further causing damage to whatever your ailment may be. Stationary bike, right? Of course, if you have a shoulder injury, probably riding outside, things of that nature may be problematic, but there are bikes specifically designed to make sure that upper body is stationary and not causing a lot of stress there. But again, I encourage to talk to the physical therapist, talk to your physician, let them know that you want to be more active. Also, if outdoors is a problem, you can go onto a treadmill. For me personally, and this is a personal preference, I don't like being on a treadmill. I prefer to be outside. There's something about being outside in nature, walking around. Also, you want to keep in mind while you work out, what are you listening to? For me, it varies depending on what I feel like I need in that space. Sometimes I'm listening to an audiobook. Sometimes I'm listening to the word. Sometimes I don't want to listen to anything. Sometimes I want to listen to gospel music. Sometimes I want to listen to Afro beats. It just depends. Afro beats, gospel music. Like it just, for me, I've learned to be attuned to my own body and my own mental headspace and kind of go from there on what is it today that's going to really help me when it comes to exercising, that part, right? So again, after the exercise, when I did the meditation, there was no music, there was nothing. It was just complete silence. And it was wonderful. But what I understand, and again, talk to your physician, is you want to do something that's going to get your breathing a little bit elevated, your heart rate a little bit elevated, things of that nature, if we're talking about exercise. Now, again, what that means, how high the elevation, all that depends on your particular situation. And you need to make sure that you speak with your doctor so that you know exactly what your scope and engagement should be. It's my thinking, Dr. Fredrica. Yeah. So, did you want to take it back here?
No, you can go on. I was just going to say to our listeners that we were just responding to a question that was asked about what happens if you have a shoulder injury. So you can go from there, Pastor Byron, in terms of what we're going to cover today. And if you have any questions or thoughts about how do you balance life, how do you balance your faith and responsibilities, what are some of them? You can post these, right? What are some of the things that you allow to get in the way of you being able to balance and manage your time? Because this is actually what we're talking about. The idea is that you're able to understand that you have control over your time, right? So oftentimes you're like, I am taking the kids here, I got the grandkids, I have work, I have this. But at the end of the day, we are the ones who God gives us the time. That's a gift. How we use the time is ultimately up to us. How busy are we going to be? So with that being said, let's think about, drop in the chat, and let's just think about in this past week, the past 7 days, drop in the chat, what have you allowed to take your time?
Yeah. And that's actually, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dr. Fredrica.
Nope, I just said somebody has already hit it. Joyce has already put hers in there.
There it is. There it is. Well, and I was going to say what we're going to cover now are actually techniques of how to engage in time management. There are two techniques that we want to talk about today. One is the 80-20 rule, and one is time blocking. All right. The 80-20 rule, the principle is essentially this, that 80% of outcomes are dictated by 20% of input. What does that mean? That means that 80% of what you see really comes from 20% of what's being done. In the church setting, we often say that 80% of the work is done by 20% of the people. It comes from this 80-20 rule. But the same is true personally. 80% of what you see in your life that's manifesting typically comes out of 20% of input. So for instance, even if in terms of prayer, right? When you look at what you see manifesting from your prayer life, right? 20%, if you're giving if that's a part of the 20% of your life, you're seeing it manifest in great ways. So a lot of times we think of time and we're overwhelmed by everything we have to do. The question is, what should you be spending? What should be in your 20%? What are the top things that you say? Because the 20% is non-negotiable. Because you still got 80% of life outside this 20%. But this 20% is what you have to do. The reason why you have to do it is because that 20% is going to give an 80% return, right? So it is going to be magnified if you just make sure you're focusing and spending the time doing that. So now is the hard work of what makes it into the 20%. What are the things where you go, if you make a list of here are the things that I would like to do, or I feel like I need to do today, right? What are the things that then make it into the 20% that, hey, there would have to be a serious emergency that would then remove this out, because it's only 20% and it's not really more than that, which means if someone calls and they say, hey, do you want to just go shoot hoops? If it's going to impede the 20%, today's just not the day to go shoot hoops or to swing the club, etc., blah, blah, blah. Unless these are the things for one reason or another that are part of your 20%. Maybe part of your 20% is getting specific exercise, because you know that that's going to manifest in a particular way. But that has to be actually pre-planned out, right? There wouldn't be a spontaneous call, right, all of a sudden, and hey, you want to go play ball in 5 minutes? Like I can't go play right now because I've already got my day planned out. And here's the thing, you could be planning to go work out already, and based on your regimen and what you have planned for you, basketball may put you off schedule of your workout plans. The whole principle is this: what's your 20%? What's your 20%? What do you think about the 80-20 rule, Dr. Fredrica?
So are you saying that where we spend 20% of our time, rewind that back for me. So 20% of my time is where I should focus on 20% of my time, or where I spend the 20% of my time is kind of dictating the 80%?
Right. So what it means is, 80% of the results are consequences of a given event or situation that stems from 20% of a cause. So what does that mean? What that means is 80% of outcome in your life really comes from where you're giving a focused 20%. That's what the concept is. So what it's really about is, if you spend a right amount of focused energy into the right 20% of your life, it's going to give way more back to you because you're focusing on the right thing. If you focus on the wrong thing, it does the opposite. It ends up feeling like it's draining you and not giving you a return on the investment of your time. When you invest right, think about it financially. If you invest right financially, you get a compounded interest return on your investment. And over time, it grows and grows and gives you far more. The same is applied to just time. The idea is, if you really focus, if there's a focused 20% where it's constant, think about in terms of working out, right? If you work out for 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, that's not a lot of time in the grand scheme of your life. It's just not. But think about what it does for you. It has major implications on your health, on your mental health, on your stamina, on your breathing, on your organ health, on your digestive system, etc. That's the 80-20 rule. It's hey, I'm only given, really, when you look at it, 20% effort in this as far as time, but the return is 80%. It's an outcome. So 80% of the outcomes that you see are based on 20% of the focus, essentially. Did I explain that better?
Yeah, no, I think it's great. So I would liken it, for me, if I think about that, I would say I believe that I spend 20%, I can sum my 20% up into relationships. In that 20%, that's my relationship with God, that's my relationship with my family, that's my relationship with my friends. It's around relationships, relationship with myself, right? So what are those things that I enjoy doing, or things that I need to do for me, that then yields, I would say, that 80%. So I do think in this time of reflection, we are asking you, as we ask ourselves, how are we spending our time? And so I think this gives, particularly for those who like to look at math and they follow concrete things such as 20%, 80%, perhaps take a look at that. And so where do you want to see yourself? So if you say mind, body, spirit, right? And you have 20% minimally that you're going to devote to that, then think about that throughout your day. And it may seem like smaller chunks than taking on some big task to say 20% of my day, I want to make sure that I'm devoted it to my mind, my body, my spirit. Body is what I eat. Body is what I drink. Body is how I work out. My mind, what am I taking in? Am I listening to music that is going to help mature me in whatever way possible, encourage me? And then my spirit, right? So how am I feeding that? Am I listening to the word? Am I reading the word? Am I singing the word? Who am I allowing in my circle, right? So I'm also guarding my peace and my spirit. So 20% of that time, it may seem more manageable to you. So tell us in the chat, drop a line, let us know where and who is receiving 20% of your time. So if you're spending 20% of your time trying to please your spouse, then that's going to be your return on your investment. So how much time do you have for yourself? If you're spending the majority of your time running with your kids and your grandkids and everybody else, where are you in the midst of that? So the goal is, it's not, if you can be a Christian and you can have self-care, right? So being a Christian does not mean that you are not supposed to take care of yourself. That is not being selfish. You cannot pour from an empty cup. It does not work. So in that regard, we're hoping that you will start putting yourself, making sure you are a part of that 20. All right, what you have next, Pastor?
It's beautiful. And when you add time blocking, it really helps to manage how you deal with 20%. So what do I mean? A lot of times what we do is, when we're spinning a lot of plates, we focus a lot on one plate until one of the other plates is getting ready to fall. And then we rush over to that plate, and then we stay on that plate. And then, oh, wait, there's another one getting ready to fall. Well, with time blocking, what you do, if you understand that, okay, I'm going to devote effort. I want to clean the house. I want to work out. I want to spend time with family, spiritual, whatever. What you then begin to do is you sit down after you've done your list. We talked about writing a list in the last episode. Sometimes you need to do that just to declutter your mind. If your mind gets too cluttered and you're like me, you'll begin to just shut down. You won't do anything, or you go blank. You can't remember anything that you're supposed to do. So a part of I make time to just write down everything I need to do. Here's my list. After I make my list, I time block. I'm giving 30 minutes of time to do this. I'm giving 15 minutes of time to do this. I'm giving 30 minutes here to break. I'm giving 15 minute time, right? So you're now blocking it out. The key with this is it keeps you moving to different plates. So for instance, if we wait to do the laundry or wait to do the house until the plate's getting ready to fall, now we need a whole day. I need several days because it's just insurmountable. But what if we time blocked it? On Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, I'm going to spend 30 minutes cleaning up. I'm just going to devote 30 minutes to cleaning up. Whatever I get done, I get done. Whatever doesn't get done, it doesn't get done. But what you'll find out is because you're devoting time, you get a lot more done and the plates keep spinning because you're moving from plate to plate to plate more. And you've planned strategically how to do that instead of being reactionary. That is just waiting to see which plate that you notice is getting ready to fall down, because sometimes we don't even notice it. The plate just falls and breaks. And now we have to sweep and we're trying to super glue it together, put it back up there and spin. So now we've got way more time that we're having to focus on an emergency that we could have avoided, right? And now there are other emergencies happening. So what you do is you time block. You really figure out, all right, even for sermon prep, right? For people who are clergy, right? I would love to have hours at a time to do it. That's what I want. But do I have that usually? No, I do not. What I have are 30-minute blocks that I can implement in order to do it. That when you connect it holistically, puts in and adds up to hours. It just doesn't feel like it because you're doing it in blocks. So if you can begin to discipline to block out your days, devote specific amount of time. I've got an hour to work out on Monday. I've only got 30 minutes on Tuesday, right? You block that out and stick to that, and you'll find out that you're managing your time better. You'll find out that you have more time than you realize because you're not having to spend as much time on emergencies, which then take more time because less becomes an emergency than it needed to be. And that's time blocking. What are your thoughts about that, Dr. Fredrica?
I think that's great. I just posted a question asking our viewers, our family here, like which one resonates most with you, the 2080 or time blocking? And I started thinking about which one. I probably do more time blocking. And I'm going to say, like, and for me, I put everything in my calendar. If it does not show up in my calendar, it does not happen. I think it is great to create lists, but I have graduated from creating lists for some reason, because I started creating lists and then I'm getting anxious because I check off something on my list and that list just continued to grow and grow and grow. So now I'm on some of you all might be on the sticky tab ministry. So my ministry is sticky tabs. So it's literally not a list, right? I have to manage that because when I see all the stuff I have to do, that list, it just, over the years, I used to do my little to-do list. I have my book. Oh, it was great. The little block, check it off. Now satisfaction comes from tearing up a sticky tab. And that helps me to then do it in chunks, right? So that I know right now, but it does work for those of us who have multiple things going on. It also set boundaries, right? So from this time to this time, I'm here and I'm giving my undivided attention. But when this time ends, I've moved on. And so it helps to manage, even those of you who have family, you have children, you have other responsibilities. It's okay to say to someone up front, this is how much time I have. Pastor Byron and I do this often. Like, what time? Look at our schedules. Okay, we got this time. So we know we have this time to talk about the podcast. What are we going to talk about today? What's happening? And then there's other times when we know we're free and we don't have to have such a commitment in terms of how much time that we have. But the best thing to do is find out what works best for you. And I think regardless if it's the 80-20, if it's time blocking, the key here is prioritization, right? That you have to consciously think about how are you spending your time to ensure that it is indeed time well spent. If not, you'll be all over the place accomplishing nothing. And the exhaustion would be more from mentally holding all that in your head versus you actually doing. So if we can get to that place, and maybe you can't do it in your house, right? Sometimes I will go out for lunch or dinner, take my book, and that's when I will plan what I'm going to do. Other times I go out on a walk. And while I'm walking and I am listening to my music, I'm also organizing, asking God to help me prioritize where he wants me to be in that day. So it's not me, right? So if I feel led to do something that day and I have 3 sticky tabs, guess what? I'm gonna call that person because that person was on my heart. The sticky tab has to wait. Because what I'm trying not to do is not show up where I need to be because I am bound by my sticky tab. So I've learned to have some flexibility in that. Yes. Sonia says going to the park. Okay. That's awesome. Yes. All right, Pastor B.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So I'm the opposite of Fredrica, Dr. Fredrica. Those sticky tab, that would drive me nuts. Like that was just absolute. Like I got anxiety hearing you talk about sticky tabs being everywhere. Like, no, absolutely not. There, no. There's 2 reasons for me, and this goes to show you how everybody's different. You've got to figure out what works for you, right? I have several different books. One at the church, one that stays here, one that stays in my backpack that kind of goes with me wherever, because at any moment I need to be building on a list. And I take joy of watching things get scratched off the list, right? And also that list lets me know where my next day list is going to begin, because whatever's the right, I prioritize and have given blocks and timestamps on stuff. So you realize some stuff just, it ain't going to get done. Right. And so now that's moving over to the next day, but also it was okay because these were things that didn't need to make it into the 20% non-negotiable that day. Here's the other reason why for the life that I live, that's so important. At any moment, I get emergencies. Even like today, I had an emergency come up. At any moment, I get an emergency and I have to stop what I was doing and pivot. If you have kids, emergencies happen. If you have responsibilities, a job, if you're in ministry, if you're pastoring, one emergency after another. Well, what happens after you come out of an emergency is many times it's hard to refocus, because you, like, I'm at the age now where I forgot what I walked into the room to get from the last room, right? Let alone because I thought about something else. And what did I come in here for? Oh yeah, right. I have to get a reminder on what I came in here for. So the list serves as a reminder. It allows me to pick right back up and get right back focused. If I don't have that to turn back to, now I'll start spinning my wheels. Now I get frustrated because I still feel that I have a lot to get accomplished, but I have nothing to refocus me, nothing to shift me to get back to the task that I really should be working on. Also, sometimes emergencies take even longer and you realize you're not going to get to everything on that list, but now you know what you need to start with tomorrow. So I'm just wired differently. I don't want stickies. I'm going to lose them. They're going to be all over the place. Also, sometimes if I'm I want to be able to close the book and not see the list. I want to be away from it for a moment because now I need to catch my breath. But in this time blocking, I wanted to highlight and say this. It is very important, and we talked about this a little bit last time, that you time block breaks and rest. I remember when I worked at Harris Teeter as a teenager back in the day, that after so many hours, you got a 15-minute break. If you worked so many hours, you got a 15-minute and a 30-minute break. And if you worked a full day, I think it was like 8 hours, you got 2 15-minute breaks and a 30-minute break, right? Because they realized that one, I think there was a law around that, but two, the law was made that way because best productivity from employees comes from being able to take breaks. You need to take those breaks. Factor in your breaks, 15-minute breaks, 30-minute breaks. Go ahead and plan that. Don't wait and say, oh, once I get to feeling this way, I'm going to just go real hard. And when I feel this way, well, then I'll tap out. No. Your breaks are one of the plates that needs to keep spinning. Your rest is one of the plates. Your self-care is one of the plates that you need to prioritize and keep spinning. It's a part of the 20% that you and I need to focus on. If we don't get the return on our investment because it's not really an intentional part. So factor in, put breaks into the blocks. And sometimes based on what you're doing with other blocks, you know how much more of a break you may need. You may need an hour break because of how intense you're spending your morning time. Even if it's just, again, doing the laundry, working on, cleaning up the house, etc. Block in time to take breaks and for self-care. Do you agree with that, Dr. Fredrica? That we should block in our break time?
Oh, definitely. And I think I mentioned in a different series before, or a session we had, that even as a employer, that I started modeling that's something that God really placed on my heart last year to do for my staff. And so for us, the conference room was 1 to 1:30, and that was break time. No talking about work. You could use those 30 minutes to go for a walk, to lay down on the sofa and take a nap, to eat your lunch, whatever. Come together in the conference room and talk about whatever we wanted to talk about, but it could not be related to our work. And so I think it's also something that's modeled. So if you have children and grandchildren, and let's say Saturday is the day that everyone has to do laundry and household, do that, but then say, guess what we're going to do? We're going to stop and we're going to take a break. If it is kids coming home from school, like they've been to school all day, some of it is you want them to jump right into homework. Give them like 20 minutes of downtime. Get your snack, you can relax, and then you're going to jump into your homework, and you're going to have to get your homework done. So again, yes, it is something that we must model for ourselves. But also it's something we must model and teach our children to do. They need to see it and to say, this is break time. When my husband was living with our kids, my husband had 2 children. And so with them, what we would say is our parental time, our date time, our break is on Fridays. When we get y'all, it's on a Saturday, or if y'all with us for the weekend, that's fine. But we're going to take our time because we need a break. And that's okay to say. We've made like taking breaks, or if I need rest, as this negative thing. And particularly with Black women, it happens with Black men too, but this idea that we have these capes on and we can do everything, and it's almost like it's a badge of honor. You wore out, you look like you worn out, you tired, you're moody, your emotions are all over the place. And you want to be able to say, well, it's these kids, it's the work they need me to do. No, go somewhere and sit down. I promise you, if you take the time to take care of yourself, model and show people, some people may not like it because they want you to be doing things for them out of selfishness, but you have to take that back, because you're either going to choose to sit down yourself, or you do not want your health to put you in a place where you're forced to sit down. And then you're going to really be stressed out, because you're going to either have sticky tabs or a long to-do list that's just going to get longer because you're in the hospital attached to some kind of IV pole. So again, it's about choice. We want you, while you can, to actually choose to take care of yourself and spend your time well. Pastor?
Yeah, and I think this really gives a good segue into where I want us to kind of lay anchor as we move to the last segment today, and that is procrastination. Ooh-wee. Everybody that I know deals with this. I know I have dealt with it. The more mature I've gotten, the better I've gotten, but man, I still deal with it. Why do we procrastinate? Why is it that I know I done made the list, I done blocked it out, I got times on it, and then it's like, scroll, Candy Crush or whatever video game it is on the phone, right? You get caught up, right? And the next thing you know, now you're frustrated because you've lost your day, right? And once you start getting into that cycle, it can be very difficult to reverse it. So I thought it'd be good for us to talk about, why do we procrastinate and how do we fight against that? One of the reasons why we procrastinate is because we flat out have a lack of motivation. Have you ever experienced that, where you know what you should be doing, but you're just not motivated to do it? Right. And I hear you. I've preached it, that commitment has to kick in when motivation wanes, right? If you just do stuff when you're motivated to do it, then you're not going to fulfill it. So you got to be committed. You don't know if you're going to feel like going to the gym. You got to be committed. But I'll submit to you something else, that sometimes we need to deal with what is draining us of motivation. Why am I not motivated? And it very well could be because your self-care, it points back to that, is out of whack. What I have noticed is if I'm not working out, it drains me of motivation to do other things that have nothing to do with working out. It's just how I get energy. If I'm not spending enough time in prayer, if I don't have time in devotion, there are a number of things with my self-care where if I don't prioritize that, for whatever reason, I lose the energy and motivation to do other things. And here's how I would say I get into trouble. Other things come up that then make it to where, oh man, I can't work out now. Oh man, I can't spend time in devotion. And when that happens, it knocks me off kilter and it drains me from the motivation to do the other things that I need, to the point where now I have accepted that I just can't compromise these areas. If I compromise these areas, it's going to send me down a cycle that's going to ultimately end in me not being able to do what I need to do in other areas anyway. So I have to make sure I'm doing this. Otherwise, I'm not going to be where I need to be as a pastor. I'm not going to be where I need to be as a husband, as a father. All that, I'm going to be irritable and frustrated, etc. And it keeps on happening. Like it seeks in, Dr. Fredrica, where, oh man, now 3 days have gone. I can't work out. And so when that happens, like, oh no, we're hitting the emergency button. Byron's going to work out because I can't let a whole week go now and that not happen. I have learned this has been more of a recent revelation for me. I can't let a whole week go by. It sets me way too far in the wrong direction, and then it causes me to wane in the motivation I have to do the other things. And that's just something I've learned about myself. So lack of motivation, that really fuels procrastination at times. At least those are my thoughts. What do you think, good doctor, about the lack of motivation? And is it motivation? Is it really that big of a commitment, or do we just need to put our big boy or big girl pants on and just be committed despite how we're feeling motivational wise?
So that's a whole lot in what you just said, Pastor Byron. But what I will say, I'll say a couple of things. I will say some of it is commitment, right? Because our feelings can be fleeting. And what I mean by that is, what exactly do I need to do? Like for myself, to Pastor Byron's point, I am best in terms of my feeling when I get up and I work out. But the reality of it is it has to also be a commitment that I do, because not every morning do I feel like getting up and honoring, getting on that bike, getting outside to go walking, whatever that might be. But it's the commitment that I make. I recently did the 10K in Charleston, right? The Cooper River Bridge run. Of course, I walked the 10 miles just for me, knee-wise, I can't do the run, but I walked it. But did I prep myself as much as I should have in preparation for that? I didn't, but I was committed to it, right? I could have easily been like, I didn't train. Yes, I've done it before. Yes, so it's not like I'm brand new. So don't get me wrong there. I ain't saying if you brand new, get out there in Charleston, South Carolina in the heat and do a 10K. I'm not suggesting that. But what I am saying is that I could have done more prep. And I could have allowed, because I don't live in Charleston. So it's also a commitment to travel to Charleston, stay in a hotel to eat. You know, that's a lot of commitment and finances. But I signed up. I was like, did I feel like it? No, I drove from Atlanta to Charleston. I didn't feel like it, but I was committed to it. So I think it's a both and, right? And then sometimes when we don't feel like it, remind ourselves, why did we make the commitment? That's why we need to be careful about committing to things that we really don't want to do. But when we're doing it for someone else, it has to be something that you're led to. It's the same thing with the fast. I was in Philly this on Saturday for the day, and my cousins were talking about something that happened. And I was like, oh no, I didn't hear about that. They were looking at me like I was strange. Well, with my church, I was on the Seek fast. So we have been fasting 40 days off social media, and I have not gotten back onto social media like I once was before. I was never somebody who stayed on social media, but I would scroll from time to time. But I have moved away from that. But what it means, and I moved away from watching the news for my own mental health. I pop in and I pop out. So that's a commitment that I made for my own time, that I'm going to take my time back. So instead of me being on the news, because I used to be up every morning watching the news, 6 o'clock, I'm watching the news. I have now replaced those things. So again, revisit your commitments. Why are you committed to that? And then is it really because it's you, or is it somebody else? And then from there, once you've done that, search, why are you procrastinating with what you're doing? What is it about it? And again, sometimes we find that it's just, I need to push. And that's where I think having accountability partners come into play. So if you know that you want to work out and that's a goal of yours, and you know that that's an area where you procrastinate, get you an accountability partner and say, let's meet up at the park. Or you don't have to live in the same state. Get on the phone and y'all can commit to getting on however you're going to work out. If it's 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, let me call you, let me text you. Create a group me, do whatever you need to do. You might need accountability until it becomes a part of what you're doing so that you can then do it on your own. So there's other ways that you can combat procrastination. But if you have something on your to-do list and you had it on there last year, 2024, and then you turn around and you did not accomplish it, and it's back on your list for 2025, you really need to assess, why is it on your list? Because sometimes we will procrastinate because we get stuck and we feel like I didn't accomplish my goals or my list. So then now you are depressed by that, you're frustrated, and you feel defeated. So procrastination can also come when you feel defeated. So we also have to make sure that our goals are small, that they are measurable, so that we actually can achieve them. And once we achieve them and we can check off the box, we then feel encouraged to move on and say, we can get this done. So be mindful of that too. Don't set yourself up for failure because you're trying to create too many lists, do too many things all at one time. Just take your time, commit, get you an accountability partner, and then you'll be able to move forward. Pastor Byron?
Very well said. And there's a comment I want you to chime in on too. I'll let you think through it about how depression can actually, which is different, right, than just lacking motivation. What to do with that? But to piggyback on what you just said, and sometimes it's not even failure; it's a fear of failure that causes us to procrastinate. I feel, or there's a perception, or I'm worried, or I'm a perfectionist, right? So it's not even failure. It's that I want this to look a particular way. And if it does not look this way, then that means to myself, I feel like I'm a failure, when really you're probably not a failure. There may be some unrealistic expectations, a number of things. So the fear of failure can actually cause us to procrastinate. I'm worried about the fact that I will not succeed. The interesting thing about that is failure is actually how we learn. What I loved about being in music growing up, in high school, my jazz teacher used to say, in jazz, there are no wrong notes. There's just new ideas. And he did that to free us up. I had another percussion instructor who, the way he taught us was, he said, be confident. Just be confident. He said, we can correct you if you're loud and wrong, but I can't correct you if you're not playing to where I can hear you. So he said, be loud and wrong. And I can work with that, as opposed to not really engaging at the best level that you can. We learn more when we're all in. Now, it hurts, of course, to fail. It hurts to not meet the expectations that you had hoped for and set for yourself. But if we're honest, your greatest achievements in life had these moments of failure along the way. That's what made the achievement so great. It was hard. It was difficult. You questioned yourself. You wondered if you were going to succeed. You met roadblocks along the way. All of that you had to persevere through, right? Such is true even with our Christian walk and our testimony, right? It's not always roses. It's not always easy. There are setbacks. There are things that are unexpected. There are times where we thought we knew and understood something, and then we find out maybe I didn't know and understand this like I thought I did, right? All of that is a part of it. So if I am so afraid of failing that I never engage, then I self-fulfill the feeling of failure, because failure is the only option you have when you haven't tried. If you don't try, you automatically lose, right? It's the idea of forfeiting. I'll close it out with this. In baseball, growing up and playing baseball, you had to have a certain amount of people. You had to have 9 people to show up on your team in order to play. If you did not have 9 people show up, then you had to forfeit the game, which means you could have been the worst team, right? But at least if 9 show up, there's a chance that you could win. You at least get to play. Your uniform's going to get dirty. You're going to get some at-bats. You're going to get some game time experience. But if you don't even have enough people show up, you automatically lose. So when it comes to the fear of failure, one of the approaches that may be helpful with some is to realize, hey, just showing up already is a victory. Because at least in showing up, there's a possibility that there will be favorable outcomes. But if I don't show up, if I don't try, if I don't engage, then I guarantee the failure, because I just never had enough to even begin the first pitch in the first place. Those are my thoughts on it. What are your thoughts, Dr. Fredrica, this failure? And I know we're kind of coming now, we're coming down to the end, but does the fear of failure, is that something that can really hinder us? And how do we face that, if so?
Yeah, so I definitely think the fear of failure can be debilitating, right? And so because we are afraid to fail, then we don't do anything. And so now we are procrastinating because we are afraid to fail. I think Sister Keisha mentioned about depression. Some people, you may be experiencing depression, and that depression is one that is debilitating. And if it is related to mental health, then you may need to seek support and a therapist, as well as fear, because fear can be debilitating as well. But a lot of it has to do with our mindset. And I know that we won't have time to unpack that now. But as Pastor Byron said, from both a mental health and spiritual side, what is failure? Like, is failure as bad as we think it is? Or is the fear of failure a trick of the enemy to keep us from moving forward? Because in all things, if we choose, even when things don't turn out the way in which we hoped, there is a lesson. The mere fact that you even tried it is a blessing, right? And so at the end of the day, we have to celebrate all things, because some people leave this earth with a whole lot of hopes and dreams that are never accomplished because they were afraid to fail. So oftentimes we think, what happens if I fail? What happens if you win? But even more than that, I like to look at it as you are a winner either way, whether it turned out the way you thought it would or not. Because guess what? You can always learn how to reinvent yourself over and over again. And thank God, God gives us multiple chances to try again. So in that regard, as we look also, I want to say here finally, in prepping. So Reverend Dr. Byron Benton and I, pastor, we are going to be back on Thursday. And I'm going to segue us into the next 2 Thursdays. We are actually going to be talking about, we're going to take a look at Daniel in the lion's den. And we're going to look at what lessons can we pull from Daniel as we face a lot of the challenges we're facing right now in society, in this culture, because actually sometimes life will bring us disappointments that were not a part. We did our time blocking, we had our list, we did our 20%, and life still is lifing, right? And when that happens, what do we do? And so what we want to encourage you to do is, now is not the time to sit on the bench. We want you to spend some time there, do what you have to do, and regroup and get back in the game. Tag back in and say, I'm running my relay, I'm running my race, because God knows all things. And so he knows, and he will help us. And so in closing, for those who want to accomplish something on your list, and it's been there and it has not moved, I encourage you to give it to God literally and ask God to help you accomplish this task as long as it's for your good. Now, I ain't talking about, I know y'all know we did something on cuffing and now springtime. We're not talking about God, my springtime boo. We talk, and ain't nothing wrong if you got a springtime boo. I'm not even, if you got somebody who's gonna put on a zoot suit for Easter Sunday with you and go to church, I'm not mad at you. But I'm saying that on your list to do, just make sure you are the man or the woman that God wants you to be, and help him to help you focus on that to get you ready for whatever else is supposed to come in your life. But give that to God and ask God to help you on your way. That's what I have there, Pastor. So hopefully we'll see you all on Thursday, this Thursday at 12 o'clock. Same place. If you haven't subscribed to A Pastor and a Therapist on YouTube, and catch us there. I'll let you close us out, Pastor.
Yeah, I am incredibly excited about the next couple of episodes. I call it the sleeping with lions moments of life. What happens when, it's not your fault. You've done everything. You've made the list. You've put forth the effort. You're praying. You're committed. You're doing the self-care, but it all leads to a lion's den moment where literally, if God does not show up, it feels that the circumstances of a life will devour you, will eat you alive. And so how do you go into that situation? How can you even find rest? How can you sleep with lions? That's what we're going to talk about. That's how we're going to begin the process through, because there is a plan. Despite all that's going on in society, despite what's happening with the government, jobs and insecurity and the instability that's being intentionally in some ways created so that we really become more emotional driven, which causes us to not be able to think through logically, see what's happening around us logically, respond in a very intentional way because we're so worried, we're bound by fear and all these other things, right? Those are the things that cause us to not find rest or be able to maintain a healthy faith while we're dealing with the lions. And I need to stop because I'm beginning to talk about what we're going to talk about Thursday. With that said, though, how you manage your time is incredibly important. To bookend this today, the Lord has blessed us with time. Scripture tells us, teach us how to number our days. What that means is, God, teach me how to maximize time management. And I close with that. Spend time in prayer with God. God, teach me how and what I should be focusing on. How should I focus on it? What should I be focusing on? And incline your ear to how the Lord may lead you, because you may be surprised that some of the energy and time you've been spending on something ends up shifting, and something else that you had neglected, maybe even forgotten, maybe not even realized was there, begins to be a major part of your 20% of investment. So start with God. Start with asking the Lord, teach me how to number my days. Teach me how to organize my time. Teach me how to be led by you and to give energy today to what you would have me to spend doing, and not the other things that would just rob me of time, because I want to glorify you and I want to edify others with how I steward the time that you have blessed me with, which is limited and dwindling down every second, every minute, every hour. Amen. Thank everybody for being with us today. To all of our educators who are chiming in, happy spring break if you're in Charleston County down here, or if you're in Berkeley County down here. Of course, Dorchester too, which is where my girls go. They in school. But to everyone else and to all our educators, because I see some who are on today, thank you for spending some of your spring break with us on this Monday, Holy Week.
All right. And so don't forget, come back on Thursday at 12 and bring a friend. Take care.